Hello, Diane.
Hello, Leonard.
It's so nice to be talking to you about your dad.
Well, it's wonderful to be talking with you about my dad. I look forward to this.
You know, so many of us grew up admiring him, loving him, but you had, of course, a unique point of view, a totally different perspective on him that we never could. And that's what I want to talk to you about most. Do you remember at what age you started to have some awareness that he was not just your dad, but sort of a public figure?
It was probably sometime in elementary school. I might have been about 8 or 9. I don't think it was younger than that. But when I was aware, there's one little girl in my class that every time he dropped me off for school, she'd say, "I saw your daddy!" and you know, kind of surprised me, that name. There just aren't that many Disneys around. And, you know, my sister and I both, I think we were both called Diz in a friendly way by our, you know, classmates.
When you were growing up, when you and Sharon were growing up, where did you live?
We lived for the first 15 years of my life in Los Feliz Hills because it was very close to the old Hyperion studio. It was the second home my parents had built. Mother and father and Edna and Roy had bought 2 lots on Lyric Avenue in Hollywood, right across from John Marshall High School, within sight of the Hyperion studio. Just before I was born, it would have been in the early 30s, I was born in 33, they both moved and bought lots, Roy in Toluca Lake, and my parents in Los Feliz Hills. Still not very far from Hyperion. And that's the home I came into when I was born in 33.
I've seen some of your home movie footage of a little cottage that he built for you and Sharon. Was that in Los Feliz?
Yes, that was, I think I was 7 and Sharon was 4 at Christmas. And we were convinced Santa Claus had brought it, and I think he did. I still can't get over it. It was so miraculous. Everything was perfect.
Also in the early days, I remember you telling me once that some of the artists and animators would come over on the weekend to swim and to spend time.
We have some wonderful family footage of that. It was so much fun. It would be Ham Lusk and his family, Norm and Gladys Ferguson, and their daughter, who she was about 3 years older than I was, and I just adored her. Freddie Moore, of course, Bill Cottrell, who's married to my mother's sister Hazel. It was so much fun. My dad never could dive very well, you know, but everybody's plunging into the pool.
I guess that was when it was still almost a family.
Very much
at
so.
work,
Right.
and before it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and of necessity had to grow bigger.
Right.
Growth is inevitable, and with growth comes change.
Right.
Do you think he missed any of that spirit of the early days when it moved on?
I'm sure he must have, but then again, everything was different. And it might have just been time, but I do think it was they were all young families, and it was just a golden time.
Do you have any recollection of all of visiting the Hyperion studio, or were you too young?
Oh, yes, yes. When the little deers were there, artists were drawing them for Bambi, and Sharon and I were taken down there several times to feed them their bottle of milk. And it was very exciting.
Of course.
And I remember the first time I saw Snow White in the soundstage.
Well, you would have been very young.
Yeah, almost 5, not quite 5.
That's a very strong memory from very early
And I
on.
remember when the witch drank her brew and she turned, and when the queen did and turned into a witch, I began to scream. And the next thing I know, I was outside of the stage door in the bright sun, and a man I'd never seen before was looking down at me. I was all alone out there with this strange man in the bright sun, and they just got rid of me, you know.
Did you ever get to just wander around?
Not really there, not like we did in the news studio, Burbank, which became our weekend playground. And it was a wonderful place. Dad would, you know, take us there on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. No one else was around. And he'd throw our bikes into the car and we'd ride our bikes around. That was all so new. And it was all ours.
It was such an inviting place, too, the way it was designed,
Yes.
you know, with lawns and shrubbery and trees.
Right. Very friendly and...
Very modern for its time.
Very. I'm surprised when I think of it. But modest, but not overpowering, very contemporary, work-friendly, and anything that they would want.
Did he separate his lives, his work life and his home life?
He talked about what he was doing when he was at home, but we didn't have animation art all over the walls, you know. And I think it was kind of a refuge. He came home to us and to Mother. He traveled a lot. It never seemed to me that he was gone too often, but he did travel a lot. And he liked to see what was happening, keep abreast of what other people were doing, because he loved it.
Did he try to make time for family dinner?
Oh, yes, but it was always rather late. We always ate dinner together when Daddy got home.
But you had to wait for Daddy.
Yes, we had snacks before, you know.
I just thought of something I've never asked you. Did you ever think of going into the family business?
No, I don't think I really did. It seems strange. Sharon worked on the lot for a while. Now I wish I had worked with him. And when Ron worked with him and I hear everybody talk about story conferences with Dad and all that, I thought, oh boy, that would have been fun.
Tell me about meeting Ron and about how he came into not just the family, but the family business.
Well, I met him at USC. Mother and Dad liked him immediately, but he came into the family business because Dad wanted him there. He wanted all of his family to be in his business, you know, early on. All his family was back in those early days, pre-Hyperion, even
Cousins
during
and in-laws.
Hyperion. Yes, Mother's family, you know, Edna's family, Edna Disney's family, and he wanted it that way. And even his employees and their families, it was really good, healthy, sweet nepotism. It was wonderful. I think it's wonderful.
So what did he recruit Ron to do?
He was an assistant director, and his first film was Old Yeller, which was a wonderful place to begin.
Did he ever work with your dad on his TV segments?
Yes, he did. As his brief duties as a director, and he directed Dad in a couple of them. And,
Oh, I don't envy him that.
well, he said it was really, really anxiety time. And the classic example, he's looking at the script one night for a shoot on Walt the next day, and Walt starts at his desk, and then he goes to the bookcase. And he picks up a book from the bookcase. I'm going to save Walt and the camera a move, and I'm going to start him at the bookcase. So Dad comes in the next day all well groomed and ready, and he looks at the placement of the camera, and he said, "What's going on? I'm supposed to be at the desk." Ron said, "Walt, I thought I'd start you at the bookcase. Look, there's a reason why I wanted to start at the desk. What do you think I do with a writer every night?" You know? And Ron came home and
Spade. Hello, I'm Walt Disney.
But he was very intense about his lead-ins. He didn't particularly want to do them in the first place, he says, although he was kind of a ham. Well, very much so, you know, and a would-be actor in his youth, but he really took them seriously. What he really wanted to do was present to people what he was going to show them. And I think he did it in such a wonderful way because he was so eager, he was so in love, believed so much in what he was going to present.
Some of the most interesting moments in his introductions on the show was when he would have animals with him in that office set, including a tiger.
Yes. It was wonderful. And he look delighted with all this, a little wary.
Now, growing up, that was my sole image of Walt Disney.
Yeah, and so many.
And so many other people had the same experience, of course, seeing him week after week.
Yeah.
And I can't picture him, in fact, except in a suit and tie.
Right.
You know, looking his very best.
Well groomed.
And the other shock, I was very young, you have to understand. The other shock was the first time I saw him in a candid photograph, much later on, with what I now learn was an ever-present cigarette.
Yes.
Because you never saw that on the TV show.
No, I know.
But it was constant, wasn't it?
It was constant. And unlike Edward R. Murrow, where you couldn't miss it, you know, that curl of smoke, sadly, is the way you think of him. He was a constant smoker from the time he was probably, when he went overseas to France at the end of World War I, when he joined the Red Cross, because that's when most people start smoking, isn't it?
This wouldn't have been a shock to you. You grew up with him.
Yeah.
We just got to know him on that TV show.
Right.
What did you think of him on the show?
I thought he was Dad. He was not a different person. He was very much himself.
That's very reassuring. That's
and
nice
I tell
to
people
hear.
this. I say, well, what was your father like? I said, just the guy you saw on TV. That was him.
You know, I met Frank Sinatra Jr., who told me that he lived
Yes.
right near you when he was growing up, and that he used to see your father while he was waiting for the school bus.
Yes.
He'd always wave hello or say hi, but on the morning after broadcast, he'd ask Frank Jr. if he'd seen the show. I wanted to know what he thought of it.
I encountered Frank Jr. not too long ago, and it was really sweet. When I introduced myself, I said, we used to live across the street from the, oh, Diane. You know, I'd wait out there for your father to come out, and I thought it was really cute.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Diane, did you ever get to watch him shoot any of his introductions to the show?
No, I didn't. I would hear about it from Ron, as I said, who did direct a few of them, or was on the set for some others, I think. But they were generally shot in the morning, because that's when Dad was the freshest and the best, and it would start his day. I don't think they liked too many people on the set. I would have felt out of place, I think.
The other great thing for a young person watching that show was that we all learned the history of the Disney studio, and the history of animation for that matter. And I wonder, did you have a sense of that growing up? Did you know what he had done when you came of age? I mean, did he show you his older films? Did you get to watch them at all?
Oh, no, I've never seen an Oswald film. Dad was not one for that. He was always interested in what he was doing and what he was going to do next.
Did he ever screen anything at home?
Oh, yes. When he started doing live action film in, I think, So Dear to My Heart and Song of the South, in our home in Los Feliz Hills, we had a little den, and that became the projection room. We saw dailies with all the live action stuff. That's why he wanted it, but he ran all the great classics.
Did you have opinions when he was showing you dailies?
Yes, and that was wrong. And after a while, because he told me either to stay out and not come in for the dailies, or he wasn't going to run them at home anymore. I was 12, 13, Bobby Driscoll, you know, working up tears and stuff. I said, Dad, that's so corny. And that word corny, I guess he heard it a lot of times, and it made him very, not apologetic and not defensive, but he said, I like corn, you know.
And the people liked it too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
So
I
you-
was kind of banished from dailies.
Too bad.
Well, I deserved it, you know. In our family, we were just talking about this, that Dad had a confidence that if he liked it, a lot of people would like it. And he was right. I think that was very true.
Did you ever visit the lot when they were shooting their first big, ambitious live-action film? That would have been 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Yes. Ron had just started working at the studio. So this had to be in early '54. It was very exciting. That's when they had the whole sound stage, had a big tank in it.
Because that was a whole new chapter
Whole
in the
new
studio
chapter.
story, wasn't
And
it?
a new life, a new personality for the studio. Reason to have a big sound stage. You know, it just became grown-up Hollywood.
With a bona fide movie star.
Yes.
Did you meet Kirk Douglas?
Yes, we did. But that was all at that same time, wasn't it? When
Yeah.
Disneyland was being built,
Yes,
and that film was
absolutely.
being made, and
Pretty ambitious
Yeah.
time for your dad.
yeah.
I wondered, were you ever at Disneyland with him in that period when people would swarm around? to see
Definitely
Walt
at
Disney?
Disneyland, everybody knew who he was.
And how would he react if people came over?
He liked it. It was a validation of what he did, and that what he did was popular and liked.
You remember the first time he mentioned the idea of Disneyland to you?
Not exactly the first time, but he'd been talking about it for a long time. He was always going to do it. Yes, so that was sort of typical, wasn't it, of everything he did. It had a long period of nurturing and gestation. It always was a little bit different in the end.
But he managed to realize most of those dreams.
Yes.
Were you at the opening day of Disneyland?
No, I was not.
How surprising.
Well, it is, but neither my mother nor my sister were there too, because our father had asked us not to come. He said to my mother, I don't want any of you women coming out there tomorrow. I've got enough to worry about. It's going to be a mess. I don't want to have to worry about you too. I went back to Fort Ord and heard about it and heard what a dismal thing it was and all the bad prognostications about what a failure it was going to be.
He's looking for a microphone. He looks all confused. He's standing over there in front of the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Our feelings weren't hurt at all. I mean, this was a big day, and it was a mess.
But you had seen it at many stages of construction.
I had, but I was living away, you know, at that time, and the whole thing was built in such a short period of time. I would come down periodically to visit, but I didn't make too many visits because it was built so quickly.
I was just watching footage of a big special that was aired on television to sort of rededicate the park in Anaheim in 1959. Were you there that day?
I must have been, yes.
Richard Nixon's daughters.
That's it. I remember
cut
the
ribbon.
Nixon family, and the girls were so sweet, and Pat Nixon was such a warm, wonderful person.
Your children, now you know how to cut a ribbon, don't you? Huh?
I'll never forget that. I admired them greatly.
But somebody forgot to check out the scissors.
The ribbon cutting, the scissors didn't work, and
Meredith Wilson was there that day
and
conducting
that was a '76
the band.
trombone band, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was glorious.
I wish I could have been there to see
Oh,
that.
it was wonderful. Dad also named him one of the original trustees of CalArts. And I met him during the brief time that I was on the board right after Dad's death.
Talk about Americana, yeah.
Yes.
And Art Linkletter, who
Art Link,
your father always
yes.
turned to at moments like this and never let him down.
Right.
This kind of reminds me of something we did 4 years ago.
Yes, sir. Now listen, pal, friend, neighbor, I'm counting on you.
We'll do our best.
I'll run and pick up the grandchildren.
All right,
See you later.
And what a wonderful guy, and what a funny man. And it was so wonderful to see him out at the 50th anniversary. The 100th anniversary is going to be a whole different scene, yeah, but I won't have to be there.
Was that always his playground, you think?
It was the culmination of something wonderful and something he could really get his hands on. As he said, you know, your film's finished, you put it in a can and that's it. And you can't, there's something you'd like to change and it's too late. But with the park, it's something you can change. It's something that can grow. But then the people who really love it won't let them change any of the old attractions, you know. I don't think he ever thought that would happen.
Well, he was always one jump ahead of everybody, though. He was always looking
Yeah.
to the future.
Right.
Some of us get stuck in the present or the past, but
Right,
he
right.
never did he?
He did love nostalgia, you know, and he did bring things from way back and reuse them again. But he was always looking to the next project and very interested in the future and progress. And he would love the new technology. He would just love it.
People sometimes ask me, what would Walt Disney think about computer animation, you know, three-dimensional
Oh,
animation?
I think he'd be fascinated by it.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think he would have been leading the bandwagon, not joining the band.
But typically, I don't think he would have abandoned the old-fashioned kind.
No.
You know, the hand-drawn. He would find a way, a place for both.
I think he really was, in the truest sense of the word, a visionary.
Oh, I think so. And I used to think he was kind of silly, you know. But he knew, because he said to me several times, his memory was going to be an important one. He didn't say, I want you to make a film about me, I want you to do a family museum about me. But it's kind of for those reasons that we've gone into those two projects.
Let's talk just a little, to bring this full circle, about the museum.
Right.
Tell us what it's going to be called.
It's the Walt Disney Family Museum. We are going to restore one entire one of the brick barracks buildings in the San Francisco Presidio, and part of another one, and we will have a walk-through story of his life. We're building an archive. We've had a lot of cooperation from Disney Archives and the company, and we want it to be a place that's accessible. Because I meet so many people, like the people we're talking about, who they don't want to forget him, and they want to know more about him. It's the living Walt in film and in interviews and the people that worked with him, the whole story. It's going to take a while to do it right, but we will.
Well, I can hardly wait. I know a lot of people feel the same way. I'm thinking back to the image I had of your father, and it means so much to hear you say that was him.
It was.
It means a lot to
Yeah.
hear that, because it's kind of like hearing that Santa Claus does exist in a way. He really loomed very large in this country and in the world, and certainly to a generation that grew up watching him on TV. He was an amazing figure, and I think a lot of us are jealous of you in that regard, that you were part of his world, his intimate world.
Maybe so, especially when they were mad at their own dads, you know. And he was a wonderful guy. He was a good dad.
And I know you've dedicated a lot of your recent life to all these projects that would sort of guarantee that people didn't forget him. His films, his characters. I don't think anyone needs any reminders to remember Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But I know that in recent years you've been concerned that people not forget your father.
Well, I want them to remember him as he was, remember the man he was. A lot of people don't know that there was a Walt Disney. They think it's a company logo and that's it. He built this company, he and his brother, two brothers that worked side by side with very different personalities, very different sets of talents, but with a real strong family bond. And it's a very good story.
It's the best story. Diane, thank you so much. Thanks for giving us your time and for sharing all these wonderful memories.
It was so much fun. Thank you, Leonard.